They thought I would always be their silent ATM, quietly paying for their fake high society facade. But an email containing 6 psychotic wedding demands finally snapped my cold. Calculating limit. My one-way flight to Hawaii was not just a vacation. It was a death sentence for her lies. I did not just cut the funding. I legally locked the arrogant bride out of her venue, forcing her to watch strangers walk down the aisle of her stolen dream. Hello to the wonderful audience of Maya Revenge Stories. We are so grateful for your continued support. Unfortunately, YouTube has recently demonetized our channel, leaving us without the budget to keep operating and paying our hardworking team. If you enjoy today's story, please consider supporting us with just $1 so our staff can cover their living expenses and keep creating these stories for you. You can donate by scanning the QR code on the screen or clicking the donation link in the description or the pinned comment of this video. My name is Edith Wheeler, and I am 28 years old. I work as a senior crisis management specialist at Apex Core Solutions in Chicago. My entire career is built on calculating risk, mitigating disasters, and neutralizing threats before they have the chance to destroy multinational corporations. I look at life through the strict lens of spreadsheets, legal liabilities, and absolute damage control. Unfortunately, my biggest and most recurring liability has always been my own family. For as long as I can remember, I have functioned as the designated financial janitor for my mother, Eleanor, and my younger sister, Vanessa. While I spent 80 hours a week dissecting corporate bankruptcies and securing assets, Vanessa spent her time cultivating a massive illusion. She was preparing to marry Julian, the golden boy and primary heir to a century-old real estate empire based in Boston. The catch: Julian and his blue-blooded family truly believed they were welcoming a financial equal. Vanessa had meticulously crafted a completely fabricated persona. She sold them the grand lie that she was a highly successful tech startup founder, a self-made woman navigating the elite entrepreneurial circles of the Midwest. In reality, Vanessa had not held a steady paycheck in 5 solid years. Her so-called startup was a registered shell corporation that generated exactly $0 in revenue. Her designer wardrobe, her premium gym memberships, and her lavish champagne brunches were all secretly funded by maxed-out credit cards and the frantic emergency cash transfers she constantly demanded from me. The illusion almost suffered a total collapse when the wedding planning officially began. The wealthy Boston family expected a grand, aristocratic affair. Vanessa had absolutely nothing to her name. That was when my mother, Eleanor, showed up unannounced at my downtown apartment on a Tuesday night. She did not bother to knock. She just let herself in, immediately launching into a highly theatrical performance of tears and hyperventilation. "Edith, you have to save your sister," Eleanor sobbed, collapsing onto my expensive leather sofa, ruining the pristine surface with her smeared mascara. "Julian's parents are expecting a high society wedding. If they find out Vanessa does not have the money, they will call off the engagement. They will ruin her. You are making 6 figures a year. You have to pay for the wedding at the St. Clair Conservatory. It is the only venue prestigious enough to keep up the charade." I stared at her, calculating the sheer audacity of the request. The St. Clair Conservatory was not just a beautiful building. It was an exclusive institution that required a minimum spend of over $100,000 just to reserve the glass atrium for a single evening. "You want me to fund a 6-figure party so Vanessa can continue lying to a family of multimillionaires?" I asked, my voice completely devoid of emotion. "It is an investment," Eleanor shrieked, grasping my hands with desperate, claw-like fingers. "Once she is married to Julian, she will be incredibly rich. She will pay you back every single cent. Edith, please, you are family. You cannot let her lose this massive opportunity." I knew Vanessa would never pay me back. I knew the startup founder narrative was a ticking time bomb waiting to detonate. But as a crisis manager, I also knew that flatly refusing Eleanor would result in months of relentless harassment, emotional blackmail, and public screaming matches outside my office building. I needed peace, and I had the liquid assets to buy it. However, I never finalize a transaction without securing absolute legal leverage. Fine, I said smoothly, withdrawing my hands from her grip. I will handle the venue and the vendors, but I do it strictly my way. Eleanor cried tears of joy, praising my generosity, completely oblivious to the trap I had just laid. I did not just wire Vanessa a massive lump sum of cash. That would be reckless and stupid. Instead, I utilized my elite corporate perks at Apex Core Solutions. Through my firm's executive concierge service, I directly contacted the St. Clair Conservatory and all the luxury catering companies. I negotiated the exact terms, wired the heavy deposits from my personal accounts, and signed every single master contract myself, on paper, legally and bindingly. I was the sole guarantor and the exclusive host of the event. The venue management answered to no one but me. Vanessa, of course, remained blissfully ignorant of the legal reality. When Eleanor told her the money was secured, Vanessa did not even send me a quick text message to say thank you. Instead, she spun a brand new lie for her future in-laws. She proudly announced to Julian's mother that she was personally paying for the entire wedding out of her own pocket, claiming she had hired an exclusive, ultra-secretive event management firm that required complete and total discretion. I watched quietly from the sidelines as she flaunted her fake wealth, posting endless social media updates about imported floral arrangements and rare caviar tastings. She truly believed she had won. She strutted around with her chin held high, convinced she was the brilliant architect of a flawless scam. She was so blinded by her own narcissism that she failed to realize the monumental, fatal flaw in her grand design. Every ounce of her reputation, her carefully constructed pride, and her entire lavish wedding did not actually belong to her. It all rested securely on a stack of legally binding documents, and those documents bore exactly one signature mine. She was dancing gracefully on a stage I owned, totally unaware that with one single phone call, I could permanently turn off the lights. The weeks leading up to the grand event were a masterclass in high society theater, with Vanessa playing the lead role of a delusional aristocrat and casting me as her unpaid, unappreciated peasant servant. During the bridal gown fittings at an exclusive downtown boutique, I was not invited to sit on the plush velvet sofas and sip champagne with the bridal party. Instead, Vanessa ordered me to stand near the dressing room door, holding her heavy winter coat and her oversized designer handbag. Whenever she stepped out to model a gown that cost more than an average person earned in a year, she would critically eye my practical business suit. "You really need to buy something that does not scream corporate drone." "Edith," Vanessa sneered, admiring her own reflection in the panoramic mirrors. "My future mother-in-law will be at the rehearsal dinner. I cannot have you looking like you just crawled out of a cubicle after staring at spreadsheets for 48 hours straight. It is just so depressing." The menu tasting was even worse. Vanessa treated the Michelin-starred catering staff with open disdain, but she saved her sharpest venom for me. When I politely reminded her that adding imported white truffles and a custom caviar bar would push the catering bill up by another $15,000, she scoffed loudly enough for the venue coordinator to hear. She accused me of being painfully cheap and having zero concept of refined luxury, entirely ignoring the fact that it was my credit card absorbing the shock of her extravagant palate. But the financial abuse was nothing compared to her aggressive campaign to sanitize our family image. It happened over a tense lunch, exactly 3 weeks before the ceremony. Vanessa leaned across the table, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping impatiently. "We need to talk about Marcus," she said, her tone dripping with absolute revulsion. Marcus was the man I loved, the man I was going to marry. He was a master carpenter who built custom, high-end furniture. He had calloused hands, a kind heart, and more integrity in his little finger than Vanessa had in her entire body. We had been together for 4 years, and we were quietly engaged, though we kept it private to avoid my family's inevitable drama. "What about Marcus?" I asked, keeping my voice perfectly level. "He is not coming to the wedding," Vanessa declared, waving her hand as if swatting away a fly. "And you are absolutely forbidden from mentioning him to anyone on Julian's side. Do you understand? I cannot have Julian's uncle, who owns half the commercial real estate in Manhattan, making polite conversation with a guy who smells like sawdust and works with his hands. It completely ruins the aesthetic of a self-made tech founder having a sophisticated, upwardly mobile family. You will attend as a single woman. Before I could even process the sheer cruelty of her demand, my mother chimed in from the opposite side of the table. Eleanor placed a comforting hand over Vanessa's, then shot me a stern, warning glare. "Your sister is right, Edith," Eleanor scolded. "This day is about Vanessa securing her future. We cannot have any embarrassing distractions. In fact, on the day of the reception, I think it would be best if you did not mingle with the Boston crowd at all. You should probably just stay near the kitchen doors or the vendor entrance to make sure the catering staff is refilling the champagne towers properly. We need you to manage the logistics, not socialize." I was expected to finance a fairy tale, hide the man I loved like a dirty secret, and spend the evening acting as the hired help. I did not scream. I did not flip the table. I simply nodded, picked up my water glass, and took a slow sip. I let them believe they had successfully disciplined a disobedient subordinate. In the background, I continued to meticulously log every single receipt, every absurd demand, and every extra charge Vanessa brazenly added to my open credit account. I was quietly building a bulletproof dossier of her entitlement. However, the true catalyst, the moment that irrevocably sealed her fate, occurred a few days later during a casual afternoon tea with Julian's mother. Victoria. I had been dragged along solely to pay the bill. As Victoria gushed over the upcoming floral arrangements, Vanessa casually rested her left hand on the table, allowing the afternoon sunlight to catch the stunning, vintage diamond ring on her right index finger. "Oh, Vanessa, that piece is simply breathtaking," Victoria gasped, reaching out to admire the jewelry. "Is that an antique?" "Thank you, Victoria," Vanessa purred smoothly, a perfect portrait of old money grace. "It is a family heirloom. It belonged to my grandmother. She gave it to me just before she passed away, telling me I was always her favorite." The air in my lungs turned entirely to ice. I stared at the ring, the intricate platinum filigree, the flawless pale blue sapphire flanked by two antique-cut diamonds. It was my grandmother's ring. It was the only thing of value she had ever owned, and her dying wish was for me to have it. I had kept it safely tucked away in a velvet box in the back of my closet, waiting for the right occasion to wear it. Vanessa had not just borrowed it. She had broken into my apartment, dug through my personal belongings, stolen my most cherished possession, and was now parading it around as her own personal prop. I sat there, completely motionless, as Vanessa laughed and accepted the wealthy woman's compliments. At that exact second, something fundamental inside my chest snapped, but it did not break. It crystallized. The lingering sadness and the heavy burden of familial obligation evaporated entirely, leaving behind a cold, terrifying clarity. I was no longer an older sister trying to keep the peace. I was a crisis manager dealing with a hostile liability. I looked at Vanessa's glowing, triumphant smile, and I felt nothing but the quiet, predatory patience of a hunter watching a completely oblivious target step directly onto the trigger of a fatal snare. Exactly 10 days before the wedding, the final fragile thread holding my fractured family together snapped. It did not happen with a dramatic, explosive confrontation in a crowded room. It happened with the quiet, unassuming ping of a new email arriving in my corporate inbox. I was sitting at my desk, deep in the middle of reviewing a complex corporate merger file, when the notification popped up on the corner of my screen. The sender was Vanessa. The subject line read in bold, "Unforgiving letters, mandatory rules for attendance at my big day." Curiosity, heavily mingled with a familiar, exhausting sense of dread, prompted me to open the message. I honestly expected another absurd, last-minute list of floral upgrades, or perhaps a demanding request for a higher tier of vintage champagne to impress the Boston elites. What I found instead was a meticulously typed manifesto of pure, unadulterated cruelty. It was a numbered list of 6 non-negotiable conditions I had to meet if I wanted the so-called privilege of witnessing her marry into wealth. I read the first 2 conditions, and the blood began to pound a steady, rhythmic beat in my ears. Condition 1 dictated that I must formally and permanently end my relationship with Marcus. Vanessa wrote, with shocking arrogance, that a carpenter with calloused hands was far too low class to ever be associated with her new high society life. She demanded written confirmation that he was gone for good, stating she could not risk him showing up and embarrassing her. Condition 2 was a direct, calculated assault on my physical appearance. My natural hair color is a striking, vibrant auburn. Vanessa demanded that I dye it a dull, jet black by the end of the week. She stated explicitly that she could not risk my hair catching the light and drawing focus away from her pale complexion in the background of her professional photographs. I gripped the edge of my heavy mahogany desk, my knuckles turning stark white, but I forced my eyes to keep reading. Condition 3 escalated the financial extortion to an almost criminal level. Vanessa casually instructed me to cover the entire cost of a 14-day VIP honeymoon package to Dubai, including first-class flights, a private desert villa, and a personal chauffeur. She gave me a strict, uncompromising deadline of 24 hours to wire the funds, claiming Julian's parents were starting to ask probing questions about their post-wedding travel plans. Then came Condition 4, the demand that actually made the walls of my office spin. She demanded that I draft and sign a legal transfer of ownership, officially turning my grandmother's antique sapphire ring, the very ring she had brazenly stolen from my bedroom, into her official, legally binding wedding gift. She wanted me to notarize my own robbery to protect her from any future claims. The sheer, suffocating audacity of it all was physically heavy, but the final 2 demands were the absolute breaking point. Condition 5 required me to sign a strict non-disclosure agreement, a legal document she had clearly downloaded from some cheap online service, forever gagging me from revealing that I had financed the entire wedding. If I ever told Julian or his wealthy family the truth about her fake startup or the source of her funds, she threatened to sue me for defamation and emotional distress. And finally, Condition 6. This was the absolute masterpiece of her sociopathy. On the day of the wedding, I was strictly forbidden from wearing a bridesmaid dress or even a standard guest outfit. Instead, she demanded I wear a plain black janitorial uniform. My assigned station for the evening was not a decorated table in the grand ballroom, but the cold corridor directly outside the guest restrooms. I was to remain there, entirely out of sight, ready to plunge toilets, mop up spills, or restock hand towels if the venue staff proved too slow for her liking. I sat in the deafening, heavy silence of my office, staring at the glowing screen. 6 conditions. 6 brutal, humiliating strikes designed to erase my identity, steal my heritage, isolate me from the man I loved, and reduce me to a nameless, faceless servant. For 28 years, I had compromised. I had swallowed my pride, paid their endless debts, and absorbed their toxic behavior under the fragile delusion that deep down, we were still blood, still family. I thought my relentless sacrifices meant something, but those cruel, perfectly formatted lines of text murdered the very last surviving ounce of my familial affection. I realized, with absolute, terrifying clarity, that I was nothing more than a sacrificial lamb on the altar of her bottomless greed. A normal person might have picked up the phone immediately. A normal sister might have screamed, cried, or driven aggressively across town to unleash a storm of righteous, hysterical fury. I did none of those things. The sadness and obligation that had haunted me for years instantly evaporated, completely replaced by a cold, clinical, and utterly ruthless calm. I did not shed a single tear. Instead, a slow, chilling smile spread across my face. It was the smile of a seasoned crisis manager who had just been handed the exact weapon needed to dismantle a hostile entity. I calmly pressed the command keys on my keyboard, taking high-resolution screenshots of the entire email, ensuring the timestamp and her exact email address were perfectly visible. I saved the digital files to an encrypted, secure cloud drive, She wanted to play a dangerous game of legal threats and ultimate control. She had absolutely no idea she had just handed the rulebook to a master. I closed the email tab, picked up my mobile phone, and began to outline a counterattack so devastating, so completely unpredictable, that she would never see it coming until the ground opened up and swallowed her whole. The moment I locked my office door, I ceased being a sister and officially became an executioner. I did not waste a single second indulging in grief, hesitation, or self-pity. I grabbed my leather briefcase, walked out to my car, and drove straight to the executive management office of the St. Clair Conservatory. My mind was operating with the cold, frictionless efficiency of a high-stakes corporate raid. I was not just going to pull the plug on her dream. I was going to systematically dismantle her entire reality, piece by piece, using the very legal infrastructure she had so arrogantly ignored. I strode into the grand lobby of the conservatory, entirely ignoring the crystal chandeliers and the sweeping marble staircases that I had paid for. I marched directly to the back offices and demanded an immediate closed-door meeting with the director of events, Mr. Sterling. When I sat across from his heavy oak desk, I did not offer any warm pleasantries. I opened my briefcase and placed the thick, legally binding master contract squarely in front of him, right next to my corporate identification and my driver license. "Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice crisp and authoritative. "As you can clearly see from the master file, I am the sole financial guarantor and the exclusive owner of the event scheduled for next Saturday evening. I am here to execute a complete transfer of beneficiary rights." Mr. Sterling looked incredibly confused, adjusting his silver glasses as he looked from the contract to my face. "A transfer, Miss Wheeler, but the custom invitations have been sent, and the menus are already finalized for Vanessa and Julian. Are you canceling the event entirely?" "No," I replied smoothly, leaning forward and tapping a specific paragraph on page 12 of the contract. "Canceling would result in a forfeiture of the 60% deposit, which is financially unacceptable. However, according to Clause 4, subsection C of your own corporate terms of service, the primary account holder retains the absolute legal right to reassign the event beneficiaries, provided it is done at least 72 hours prior to the load-in time. We are currently 10 days out. I am exercising that right immediately." I had absolutely no intention of letting a six-figure party go to waste, nor was I going to let the venue keep my hard-earned money. Early that morning, while drinking my coffee, I had watched a local news segment that completely broke my heart. A young, hard-working couple, Sarah and David, both decorated paramedics and firefighters for the city of Chicago, had been brutally scammed. A fraudulent wedding planner had vanished with their entire life savings, leaving them with absolutely nothing just a week before they were supposed to tie the knot. They had spent their lives pulling people from burning buildings, and I decided, in a split second of poetic justice, to rescue their wedding day. I handed Mr. Sterling a neatly printed dossier containing Sarah and David's full names, contact information, and unit numbers. "You are going to wipe Vanessa and Julian from your database entirely," I instructed, my tone leaving absolutely no room for negotiation. "Every single marquee, every digital display, every printed menu, and every seating chart will now read Sarah and David. You will contact this couple by 5 o'clock today and inform them that an anonymous corporate sponsor has gifted them the Platinum Wedding Package, the imported white truffles, the custom caviar bar, the 100-bottle champagne tower. It all goes to them. The system keeps running exactly as planned. We are just swapping out the passengers." Mr. Sterling was speechless for a long moment, but he was a seasoned professional who understood the ironclad nature of a signed, notarized contract. He nodded slowly and began typing frantically into his computer terminal, deleting my sister's fake empire keystroke by keystroke. "There is one final, critical operational change," I continued. Reaching back into my briefcase, I pulled out 2 high-resolution, 8x10 glossy photographs. One was of Vanessa, and the other was of my mother, Eleanor. I slid them across the polished wood of his desk. I need you to distribute these faces to your entire private security team. Under no circumstances are these two women allowed onto the property next Saturday. If they attempt to enter the lobby, if they try to access the bridal suite, or if they so much as step foot in the parking garage, they are to be treated as hostile, unauthorized trespassers. You will instruct your guards to deny entry and, if necessary, call the police to have them physically removed from the premises. Mr. Sterling picked up the photos, his eyes wide with realization as he grasped the gravity of the situation. Understood. Miss Wheeler, we have a strict zero-tolerance policy for gatecrashers. The perimeter will be completely locked down. I thanked him, shook his hand, and walked back out into the bright afternoon sunlight. The first stage of the heist was complete. I had stolen the castle right out from under the false queen, but my retaliation was far from finished. I sat in the driver's seat of my car, locked the doors, and pulled out my mobile phone. I opened my encrypted banking application. For years, I had maintained an open, high-limit supplementary credit card under my name, which Vanessa carried in her designer wallet. It was the very card she used to fund her lavish lifestyle, pay for her premium gym memberships, and buy those endless rounds of drinks for her wealthy future in-laws. With 3 swift, decisive taps on the glass screen, I reported the card as completely lost and permanently frozen. I watched the digital confirmation spin on my screen, a tiny green checkmark that finalized her financial ruin. I did not stop there. I went into the deeper settings and systematically severed every single joint account, blocked every recurring transfer to my mother, and locked down my personal credit profile with an airtight fraud alert. Every pending transaction Vanessa had tried to run that afternoon would bounce. Every open tab she had at her fancy bistros would be brutally declined. Within 60 seconds, Vanessa went from a self-proclaimed tech millionaire to a woman with absolutely zero purchasing power. Her financial lifeline was dead. Finally, I opened my text messages and scrolled down to Marcus. He was probably in his workshop, covered in sawdust, completely unaware of the massive storm I had just unleashed. I bypassed the usual travel sites and logged into my corporate rewards portal. I redeemed 500,000 miles to secure 2 lie-flat seats in the business class cabin on a direct flight to Maui, alongside a 2-week reservation at a secluded, cliffside villa. I typed out a quick, simple message to him. Pack a bag for a tropical climate. I just booked us 2 business class tickets to a private luxury resort in Hawaii. We leave on Friday morning. I love you. I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat and started the engine. The trap was flawlessly set. The intricate gears of the wedding machine were still turning smoothly. The Michelin-starred chefs would still cook the decadent meals. The florists would still arrange the thousands of imported white roses. The string quartet would still tune their instruments. Everything was perfectly in place for a magical evening. It was just not meant for the traitor who thought she could treat me like garbage. She had demanded a flawless wedding, and she was going to get exactly what she legally paid for. Absolutely nothing. At 36,000 feet above the Pacific Ocean, the air was remarkably still. It was Saturday morning, and while the rest of my family was likely spiraling into their final hours of pre-wedding chaos, I was reclining in a plush, lie-flat leather seat. Marcus sat beside me, his large, warm hand comfortably resting over mine. A flight attendant with a bright, genuine smile quietly approached our suite and poured 2 glasses of chilled vintage champagne into crystal flutes. We clinked our glasses together. The gentle chime was the exact sound of absolute, unconditional freedom. For the first time in 28 years, my shoulders were entirely relaxed. I was no longer an emotional punching bag. I was no longer an unpaid accountant for a family that despised me. I closed my eyes, letting the subtle hum of the aircraft engines wash over me, knowing perfectly well that a massive, unstoppable hurricane was about to make landfall back in Chicago. 3,000 miles away, the sun was beginning to set over the downtown Chicago skyline. Vanessa stepped out of a sleek, black chauffeured limousine, looking exactly like the billionaire heiress she had aggressively pretended to be. Her custom designer gown was flawless. a cascading waterfall of imported silk and French lace. She hooked her arm securely through Julian's, flashing a brilliant, triumphant smile for the hired photographer. Behind them, a fleet of luxury town cars unloaded nearly 200 of Julian's aristocratic relatives, the Boston elites, dressed in tailored tuxedos and glittering evening gowns, murmured in polite admiration as they approached the grand entrance of the St. Clair Conservatory. Vanessa walked with the supreme confidence of a conqueror. She truly believed she had crossed the finish line. She thought she had successfully buried me, stolen my heritage, and secured her royal crown. Her triumphant march halted abruptly at the base of the grand marble stairs. Vanessa froze, her perfectly contoured smile faltering as she stared up at the massive, high-definition digital marquee positioned directly above the main doors. Instead of the elegant, custom-designed monogram she had demanded, the glowing letters displayed a completely different message. The board read, in bright, joyful typography, celebrating the beautiful union of Sarah and David. Julian stopped beside her, his brow furrowing in confusion. He looked from the sign to Vanessa. "Darling, who are Sarah and David? Did the venue load the wrong digital file?" Victoria, Julian's wealthy mother, stepped forward, her sharp eyes narrowing at the glowing display. "This is highly unprofessional for a venue of this caliber. Vanessa, did your secret event management firm make an error with the reservations?" Vanessa let out a forced, high-pitched laugh, her knuckles turning white as she gripped Julian's arm. "It is just a stupid technical glitch. Victoria, you know how incompetent these local technicians can be. I will go inside and have them fix it immediately." Vanessa unhooked her arm from Julian and stormed up the marble steps, her heavy silk train dragging behind her. She pushed through the heavy glass doors, ready to unleash a torrent of verbal abuse on the first employee she saw, but she did not make it past the foyer. A wall of 4 imposing security guards, all dressed in sharp black suits with earpieces, instantly stepped forward, completely blocking her path to the grand ballroom. Behind them, through the glass partitions, Vanessa could see the lavish reception. The imported white roses were perfectly arranged. The custom caviar bar was fully stocked. But the people sitting at the tables were not her guests. They were off-duty firefighters and paramedics, laughing and raising their glasses in a joyous, vibrant celebration. "Excuse me," Vanessa hissed, her voice echoing in the marble lobby. "Get out of my way right now. I am the bride. You are ruining my wedding, and I will personally see to it that every single one of you is fired." Mr. Sterling, the director of events, calmly emerged from behind the security line. He held a sleek electronic tablet in his hands, his expression completely devoid of sympathy. "I am sorry, ma'am, but you are not the bride," he stated loudly and clearly, ensuring his voice carried to the crowd of wealthy Boston guests gathering curiously near the doors. The legal owner of this master contract executed a complete transfer of beneficiary rights several days ago. The venue is currently occupied by the legal recipients. You are not on the authorized guest list. In fact, you are explicitly listed as an unauthorized trespasser. Vanessa's jaw dropped. The blood drained entirely from her face. "That is impossible," she screamed, her carefully crafted, sophisticated persona instantly evaporating into raw, ugly panic. "I paid for this. My company paid for this. I demand you let me into my wedding." Mr. Sterling remained incredibly calm, a seasoned professional dealing with a disruptive intruder. "Ma'am, we have absolutely 0 invoices, 0 contracts, and 0 payments associated with your name or your supposed company. If you believe there has been a financial error, please present the credit card or the banking application used to secure the deposit, and I will gladly verify it with our accounting department right now." Julian and his parents stepped into the lobby, watching the bizarre scene unfold with growing horror. "Just show him the card, Vanessa," Julian urged, his voice tight with embarrassment. "Clear this up so we can get our guests inside." Trembling with rage and sudden, suffocating terror, Vanessa snatched her designer handbag from her mother. Eleanor, who had just rushed into the lobby, Vanessa dug through the expensive leather pouch and pulled out the premium credit card, the one with my name legally attached to the primary account. She practically threw it at Mr. Sterling. He caught it, tapped it against his mobile payment terminal, and waited. A harsh, loud beep echoed through the silent lobby. The screen flashed bright red. "Declined," Mr. Sterling announced flatly. "The account has been frozen and reported as stolen." Vanessa gasped. Snatching the card back, she frantically pulled out another card, then a third. She shoved them against the terminal one by one. Beep, declined. Beep, declined. Every single piece of plastic she touched was dead. The silence in the lobby was absolute and deafening. Hundreds of Boston's wealthiest individuals stood utterly paralyzed, watching the self-proclaimed tech billionaire desperately swiping frozen credit cards while wearing a stolen antique ring. The illusion was not just cracking, it was shattering into a million irreparable pieces right in front of her future in-laws. "Security," Mr. Sterling commanded, pointing toward the heavy glass doors. "Please escort these unauthorized individuals off the property immediately. If they resist, contact the local authorities." Meanwhile, Marcus and I were stepping off the plane into the warm, tropical breeze of the Hawaiian Islands. The moment we reached the private luxury transport waiting for us on the tarmac, I reached into my bag and finally turned my mobile phone off airplane mode. I did not even have to wait 5 seconds. The screen instantly lit up, vibrating violently in my hand like a possessed machine. The notification counter skyrocketed. 10 missed calls, 30 missed calls, 73 missed calls. My inbox was flooded with dozens of unhinged, frantic text messages from Eleanor and Vanessa. The messages started with arrogant demands, quickly devolved into hysterical threats, and finally dissolved into pathetic, desperate begging. The contrast was absolutely poetic. As I looked out at the tranquil, endless blue ocean, soaking in the beautiful silence of my new reality, my family was drowning in the spectacular, humiliating disaster they had forced me to build for them. As the sun began to set on the secluded Hawaiian beach, painting the sky in brilliant, sweeping strokes of violet and gold, I sat perfectly still on the warm sand with Marcus by my side. My mobile phone, resting on the woven beach towel between us, vibrated once again. It was the 73rd consecutive phone call from Eleanor. The sheer, frantic persistence was almost impressive. I picked up the device, swiped the glass screen to accept the call, and slowly pressed it to my ear. I did not even get the chance to say a simple hello. A chaotic, deafening wall of sound immediately exploded from the small speaker. It was a hysterical, terrifying symphony of Eleanor shrieking in absolute fury and Vanessa hyperventilating through ugly, wet sobs. "You ruined everything!" Eleanor screamed, her voice completely hoarse and cracking under the strain. "You maliciously destroyed your sister's entire life. We are standing out here in the cold parking garage. The security guards threw us out of the lobby like common criminals in front of everyone. Julian is threatening to call off the engagement right here on the concrete. How could you do this to your own flesh and blood? Fix this right now. Edith, call that manager and pay them whatever they want to let us back inside." Before I could formulate a response to her delusion, the distinct sound of a physical struggle echoed through the phone. Someone forcefully yanked the device away. When the next voice spoke, it was low, tight, and vibrating with absolute, barely contained fury. It was Julian. "Edith," he demanded, his usually polite, aristocratic Boston accent entirely stripped of its refined polish. "I need an explanation from you right this second. Your sister is having a complete mental breakdown on the pavement. The venue manager just loudly informed my father that Vanessa has absolutely zero financial assets and that you are the sole legal owner of the master contract. What the hell is actually going on? What is this financial shock she's refusing to explain?" I listened to his heavy, angry breathing on the other end of the line. The warm tropical breeze gently brushed against my face. When I finally spoke, my voice was as soft, cold, and precise as a surgeon's scalpel. "Julian, I highly recommend you take this phone off your ear and put me on speakerphone right now, so my mother and sister can hear every single word. I waited a beat until I heard the distinct, hollow click of the external speaker activating. Vanessa is not a technology founder, I stated clearly, letting the heavy truth drop like an anchor. She has not earned a single paycheck in 5 solid years. I have personally paid for her lavish lifestyle, her mounting debts, and every single cent of that extravagant wedding. But 10 days ago, she sent me an email containing a list of mandatory rules I had to follow if I wanted to attend the event I was entirely funding. Let me read condition number 5 aloud for you, I continued, my tone completely devoid of mercy. It explicitly states that I must sign a strict non-disclosure agreement, forever hiding the fact that I am her financial sponsor, because my mere existence ruins her self-made aesthetic. She also demanded I break up with my fiancé because he is a carpenter and too low class to breathe the same air as your wealthy family. Furthermore, Julian, I want you to look closely at the vintage sapphire ring currently sitting on your bride's right hand. She told your mother it was a cherished heirloom passed down directly to her. It is an heirloom, but it was left exclusively to me. Vanessa broke into my apartment and stole it from my bedroom closet just to impress your parents. A heavy, suffocating silence fell over the Chicago parking garage. I could hear the distant hum of city traffic, but the people gathered around that phone were entirely mute. Then, Julian spoke, and the absolute, visceral disgust in his tone was palpable even through the digital connection. "You stole from your own sister," he asked, his voice dripping with pure revulsion. "You lied to my family for months. You faked your entire existence. You are absolutely pathetic." Vanessa let out a desperate, guttural wail, the sound of a cornered animal realizing the trap had permanently snapped shut. "Julian, please, I can explain everything. She is lying out of jealousy. Please do not leave me." But her cries were met with the heavy, definitive footsteps of the Boston elites turning their backs in unison. "Do not ever contact me or my family again," Julian commanded sharply. "This wedding is permanently canceled." I heard a heavy car door slam shut, followed immediately by the loud roar of a luxury engine speeding away into the night. Vanessa was left wailing on the cold pavement in her heavy designer gown, her entire empire of pathetic lies reduced to absolute ash in less than 3 minutes. Eleanor snatched the phone back from the ground, sobbing uncontrollably into the microphone. "Edith, what have you done? We have absolutely nothing now. Julian is gone. She has nothing." I took a deep, refreshing breath, filling my lungs with the crisp, salty air of the Pacific Ocean. "By the way, Mother," I said, my voice completely empty of any remaining sympathy or obligation. "Condition number 6 dictated that I wear a black janitorial uniform to clean the venue bathrooms tonight. I actually bought the outfit, but I left it neatly folded in the trunk of your car. Now you and Vanessa can put it on and clean up the massive pile of garbage you have made of your own lives." I pulled the phone away from my ear and tapped the red button, cutting off her hysterical scream mid-breath. With a few swift, practiced taps on the screen, I permanently blocked both of their phone numbers, locked down my email, and severed all social media connections. I turned the device completely off and tossed it carelessly into my beach bag. I turned to Marcus, smiled a genuine, radiant smile, and rested my head comfortably against his strong shoulder. As we watched the brilliant sun disappear beneath the vast, endless ocean, I finally closed the heavy iron door on my toxic past, stepping freely into the beautiful, peaceful reality of my own true life. Thank you so much to our amazing listeners for tuning into this journey today. Where in the world are you listening from? Please let us know down in the comments section. If you enjoyed today's story and felt the satisfaction of this conclusion, we humbly ask for your support. Since YouTube has completely demonetized our channel, we are left without a budget. A contribution of just $1 helps us pay our incredibly hardworking staff, allowing them to afford their living expenses, feed their families, and continue creating these high-quality stories for you. You can easily support us by scanning the donation QR code currently on your screen, or by clicking the donation link provided in the video description and the pinned comment below. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and please have a wonderful, peaceful day.